Welcome to Family Fun and Lifestyle. We're going to make homemade chili with homemade cornbread. Start off with some hamburger meat. And then you're going to want to go ahead and chop up an onion or two. Because I'm using some canned tomatoes and onions, I'm just going to chop up one onion. And as well, you're going to want to mince up some garlic. A tip here when you're chopping up your onions, if your onion is overpowering and making you cry, then rinse it off. Also, you can leave one end on while you're chopping up the onions, and that will actually help with the crying too. I definitely struggle sometimes with tearing up when I'm doing onions, so I've learned a few little tricks here and there. This is actually cooking while your hamburger meat is on the stove on medium heat. I'm going to go ahead and just add this in there right now, and then we'll come back and mince up the garlic. I do want to say that you can also cook this in your pressure cooker or your crock pot. I'm doing it on the stove so you can see how easy it is to cook it on the stove. So here we're going with the garlic, and what I like to do is I'll take off the ends of the garlic, and then you'll see here in a minute, I'm going to go ahead and take off the ends, and to make it easy for peeling, just place the garlic underneath the knife and flatten the knife and slam it down. I do apologize for the scratch on my hand. We did just adopt a cat that we found outside that was living under a tree in our front yard. And so we just adopted a kitten. And so that's a little battle wound from our new kitten, who is the sweetest thing. But definitely, we just decided to bring him in because it was so cold outside. All right, so now that you've got the peel, it just peels off like that. And I'm going to go ahead and use all of the peelings and put them in the compost. But once they're peeled, I'm just going to mince these up real quick with this knife. And these are the Cuisinart knives, and I'll go ahead and link those up down below. In fact, everything that I'm using in this video, I'll link up down below in case you would, once I find it on Amazon, in case you would like to get the same ones. I will say I've used these knives for a couple weeks now, and every last one of them, it was a whole set that I bought, and they are working great. As you can see, just dice up really easy. You do want to probably not wash them in the dishwasher so that you don't peel off that paint, but that paint does help. I don't know about you, but I do wind up having tools and utensils that say they're stainless steel and they rust. It's so irritating. All right, the other ingredients you're going to need is, I'm using black beans. You can use any variety of beans. Just look at the ingredients on the back. You want to look out for ingredients that say EDTA. Do your research on that. It's an actual preservative that they're using in some beans and other products. And I have found that it's also used in chemotherapy treatment and can make people sick if they eat too much of it. So when you're looking at your vegetables and your ingredients, make sure that you get ingredients that do not have EDTA in it. EDTA is definitely something that I don't recommend. You're also going to look to see if it has a label on there that says bioengineered food ingredient. And that's when I usually do not buy it either. I like to stick with non-GMO food as much as possible and as in the raw as possible. Kroger does have some products that has that EDTA. In fact, I believe their pinto beans, same brand, does have that EDTA, but a lot of their actual ingredients are pretty healthy. So I usually wind up buying them or Simple Truth. Now, I am using the jalapeno mix of tomatoes as well as the chili mix of tomatoes. I'm also using 3 cans of black beans. Again, you can mix the beans if you want, but I'm using those for extra flavor. I do have a 6-year-old, and so this is a kid-approved meal. Here you'll see we are frying up the hamburger with the garlic and the onion. And because I have those tomatoes, those cans of tomatoes, I won't be adding more onion. Just the one onion is more than enough. You're going to want to cook this on medium heat. I highly recommend keeping it on medium heat. 1, to save your pans. It might take a little extra time to cook, but it's well worth it. And 2, to make sure that you're not scorching your food. So medium heat. You're going to want to fry this up, and when this is done, you're going to go ahead and add your canned vegetables to the mix. And then I have some seasonings that you can also put in there to create your chili. Cover and let it cook up, and then we're going to pull out our cast iron because we're going to make cornbread. You're going to need a bowl, of course, to mix. Okay, to make our cornbread, all we're going to do is we're going to need 1/3 cup butter. This is without milk. We're going to need 2 eggs, some flour, some cornmeal, baking powder, sugar, and 1 cup water. And that's what we're going to mix all together. And of course, a teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix all that together, put it in our cast iron. Boom. Love my cast iron. And put it in the oven. So let's get cooking. By the time you pull out all your ingredients, you'll probably want to take a look at your meat and check it. It is cooking up nicely. Again, I covered it and let it just simmer. And so you'll see, it's definitely giving my camera a nice little haze. And once your meat is done, add in your beans. So my daughter is actually helping me here. She's adding in the beans and the tomatoes. Now I will leave the bean juice for 2 of the cans of beans in the beans, and then 1 can I drain. And that way I've got a little bit base for my sauce. And so you'll see here I'm just leaving the juice of 1 or 2. And then we're going to put in the tomatoes and we'll cover it and let it cook again. While I was putting in the beans and the tomatoes, I had put the butter in the microwave to go ahead and melt. Now I'm using my 2 eggs, and because we're not using milk, you want to whisk these 2 eggs before you put in your other ingredients. Just kind of make it a little frothy. I mean, you're not going to take a hand beater to it, but you definitely want to mix them up so they get a little bit thicker, and that's what you'll see me doing here. Next, add in the melted butter, which I was melting while I was adding in the ingredients into the chili. Mix that in, and then we're going to add in the rest of the ingredients. Pretty simple and easy. It literally takes probably 5 minutes to mix everything up. So I will add in the 1 cup flour, 1 cup cornmeal, also 2/3 cup sugar, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/3 cup melted butter, which we already talked about, the 2 eggs, which we already talked about, the 1 tablespoon of baking powder, yes, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and 1 cup of water. Basically, the extra egg and the water makes up for the milk, and then whisking the eggs together to create a little bit more froth also helps to make up for the eggs in this recipe. Here, you're simply mixing it up to the consistency that you can see on the screen. It's going to be a little runny, and you want to make sure you get, of course, everything from the sides. Grab your spatula and pour it into your cast iron pan. Now, I like to put a little oil on that cast iron pan to make sure that it doesn't stick too much. That's why my cast iron pan looks like it's been recently greased. And it's just a really well seasoned pan that I also use that I also add additional grease on. Oil. Here I'm just pouring it in. It fits perfectly into the pan. It's a great recipe. The proportions are just right for the cast iron skillet, and we're just going to put this in the oven. You want to cook it at 390 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. So while you're doing this, you can go ahead and work on your chili. I also just clean my dishes while I'm doing this, so everything's all caught up and ready to go. But you want to stick this in your pan or your oven, and it's going to be brown on top, and you'll be able to put a toothpick in there, and it will go ahead and show that it has come back clean. Let's move on to the chili. This doesn't usually happen, but it seemed like my chili sauce was a little thin this time, so I added in some tomato sauce. You can also add in tomato paste, and you'll see the ingredients here. This will just help to thicken up the sauce as it's cooking. Now I'm going to show you some of the spices, and we're doing all of this while the cornbread is in the oven cooking. By the time the cornbread is done, the chili will be done as well. So here we're adding some salt and pepper for flavor. I will tell you that I don't add a lot of salt and pepper during the cooking process. I do add it during the cooking process specifically because it helps with blending the flavors together, but I don't do a lot because I do have a 6-year-old child, and so we wind up adding extra when we get it on our plate usually. She doesn't like it too spicy. Chili powder, I usually put 1 to 2 tablespoons of chili powder in my chili, just depending upon how big of a batch I'm making. It all is about taste for you, but chili powder is a great complement to your chili. I highly recommend, if you're making homemade chili, to add that to it. And again, also when you look at the fact that the cans that we used, the tomatoes that were seasoned with chili powder and cayenne pepper, so we don't have to use a lot. Now cayenne pepper, I use about a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I don't use a lot of this because, again, a 6-year-old, you do by flavor preference of your family. That's what being a home cook is all about. And then the last ingredient I add is cumin, and I usually only do like 1 teaspoon of cumin, maybe a little bit more, because I don't want it to have that taco flavor, and cumin can really give you that taco flavor. Mix this together and let this cook up for 10 to 15 minutes while the cornbread is in the oven. Cover it and let it simmer. I keep it again at medium heat, and it will all be done about the same time, which is great because your meal is just ready to go. For me, when I pull my cornbread out of the oven, you'll see it's definitely brown on the top, and I'm cutting through it with my rubber spatula, my silicone spatula. That's how great it is. And you pull it out. I'm pulling it out from the middle to show you it all stays together. And sometimes when you're changing up recipes so it doesn't have a certain ingredient like milk, sometimes they get kind of crumbly, but as you can see, it all stays together. It's perfectly cooked in the inside as well as on the bottom, and just really tasty and adds a nice little flavor to the side of your chili. And here is dinner. Dinner is served. Bon appetit. What toppings do you use on your chili? Let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear it. Thanks so much for watching. And what kind of variations do you use in making your chili? That would be a fun conversation too. We'll see you in our next video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. See you soon.